Recently, I was able to sit down and talk with Adam Bradford about D&D Beyond, the mastermind behind the software. And he gave me some great insight into it, a lot of things that are coming up. And so I encourage you to check out this whole video. And if you have any questions, post them below. I am Juice. This is Master the Game. Let's get started. Make sure you head on over to rpgjuice.com, where you can get caught up on the latest videos, the latest news, and blog posts from Juice himself. Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juice, and today I'm doing a special one-on-one interview with Adam Bradford from D&D Beyond. Adam, care to tell everyone about yourself? Just clue everyone in on who you are and your, relationship to D&D Beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I am Adam Bradford, and I am the product director for D&D Beyond. I essentially manage all of the various teams and support teams within Curse in making sure that D&D Beyond got off the ground, but then also that we're adding, all the good stuff as we're going forward. So very much a passion project, and I have a dream job. So that's pretty much who I am.
That sounds like a dream job to me too. I wish I could do something like that.
One of these days, you never know.
I'm striving.
I was stuck. I've told this story a couple of times, but I was stuck in a very, very boring defense and aerospace job. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm sure it really excites some folks, but for me, it wasn't really where it's at. And so I was stuck in a job. It paid really, really well. A lot of security. I could have, retired and been completely fine, but I think I hit 33 years old. So I started getting really, really old. And I looked at myself in the mirror and said to myself, is this really what you want to do? Is this really how you want to retire? Is this, really what you want out of life? And the answer just kept coming back as no. And, that being the case, I said, hey, this company Curse has moved into my backyard. If you can't tell from the accent, I am from Alabama. So Huntsville, Alabama is where we are headquartered. And I've been here my entire life. I've gotten to travel a lot, which has been wonderful. But I really love the area. I've got family here. The cost of living is wonderful. And so really wanted to stay around Huntsville. But, hey, this video gaming company has moved their headquarters here. And so one day, just kind of out of the blue, I said, I'm not getting any younger, so I'm going to go and just see what happens. So, send in an application, resume, and they contacted me to start working on something that I'm not remotely working on anymore, but, got the job, got the foot in the door. And the best thing about Curse, and the reason that it really is just a dream job, is because they give a lot of freedom and latitude for, passionate people within the company to be able to forge, new directions. And that has been a real privilege. We had not done anything that was not video gaming based. And this was the first thing. D&D Beyond was the first thing. My second day on the job, they started talking about, hey, we need to somehow figure out a way to maybe, work into some kind of business that's not completely dependent on ad revenue, because, ad block is getting to be a really rough thing. And then we need to maybe move into some different verticals, different types of, areas of interest, because video gaming is a very crowded space. And so, having played Dungeons and Dragons, 20 plus years, I was like, I've got just the thing, guys. So I held my tongue on day two, but by month one, I think I really started talking about what ended up becoming DDB.
And how long did it take from day two until you guys did the beta testing of Beyond?
Yeah, so I was hired in May, I think it was right around the 1st of May, and we were sending. I'll really never forget that, because we had talked about what we were going to do. I had really talked about how everything in tabletop gaming was really growing at these just intense rates, and it was just such an exciting time to be gaming in that space. And I knew that with Curse's expertise and how we had put together database and tool-based sites in the past for other video games, I knew that it was this really, really good fit. I knew that we had some, the cards stacked against us in a lot of ways, because the community reception I knew was going to be very negative when we started out, because there had been so many false starts, problems in trying to get a digital tool set off the ground in the past. But we knew that those were some risks that we wanted to try to work through, and we knew we were a little late to the game, but we knew that with a commitment like we were going to put in place, that we would be able to catch up over time. And so we sent a little teaser trailer to Wizards of the Coast, just a little 30-second sizzle reel, and I think it was right around, that would have been in October of that year. So it was, from May to October, we had sent that sizzle reel, and I think we were on the phone with them the following week, and just talking about what the possibilities were. And it was an instant match and made a lot of sense for a variety of reasons. And we were able to move forward pretty quickly from there. Nice.
So it was around mid 2016, probably. Somewhere in there.
Yes, that seems like a long time ago, but yes, that's when we started. And when we put together this sizzle reel, as technology companies typically do, none of that was actually working. This was a designer doing this really, really good job of working with me and conceptualizing how the stuff was going to look, and putting it together, and then making it faking it until we made it, right? And so
sure.
So that's what was happening in the video, because development costs so much money. It's not something that you want to put a lot of effort into until you know what you're going to get out of it. So we put that together, just a concept. And once Wizards of the Coast responded favorably to that, and we started talking, and we knew that this was something that we really needed to dive into, it was, I think, November that we had a proof of concept up that was an actual, I think it was the spells listing was the first thing that we did. We moved to magic items and monsters very, very quickly. And so we had the searchable database of all those types of game elements in place with all the advanced filters. So we had that together in just a little over a month. I think it was maybe 6 weeks at the most that we had that up and running, because that really was the focus of D&D Beyond. In the early days, it was intended to be a way to access your D&D book content digitally, because obviously there had not been a great solution for that, within the community up to that point. And so we wanted to offer the book content. And then we early on knew that we could take some of that expertise from Hearthpwn, and even we have Madden and Foothead, like FIFA sites that really do a great job of taking that information and putting it into relational databases with all the filtering capabilities. So it really started as an attempt to take the Dungeons and Dragons rule set and the adventures and apply those principles to it. So in the earliest conceptualization of D&D Beyond, it really was just a rules database. And so it had nothing to do with a character builder, it had nothing to do with a character sheet. None of those things actually existed when we first started, because it was kind of a grassroots beg, borrow, steal, like, hey, can we get resources to maybe work on this? And
right.
So we didn't want to bite off more than we could chew at that point in time. And so after we got that up and running, and by the way, that's one of the reasons that aspect of D&D Beyond right now, I think, is by far in the most complete state. I think it's in the best shape, being able to use the books online, and being able to search through them, and all of those filters and the listings. I think they're in a really good spot at the moment. And as we got into the process, we started thinking again that if we are going through all the trouble to take every single spell and parse out what type of save is required to react to that spell, or what type of effect that's going to do, and we're tagging all these things, we started thinking this would be incredibly useful to somehow be able to build characters, but then also be able to play with characters digitally at the table, because I, had used paper for a very long time, and I actually wasn't very sold on the idea of a digital character sheet in the beginning because it just seemed like something that I wasn't sure people actually wanted in the community. So then after we started getting a little further down and we started doing our different rounds of feedback and we were talking to Wizards of the Coast, we saw that there really was this need and this desire to have your characters digitally that you could track at the table. And so from there, we started really focusing on that component. And that's what took us into beta, really, is, as we started that, we signed the agreement with Wizards of the Coast. We ended up getting into our beta testing period, which, of course, was really centered around the builder and the digital character sheet in big ways. And so from there, once we saw the reaction to that, and once we saw the response and how much desire and demand there really was for these components and for a variety of other tools, we really started, because from there I was like, hey, the sky's the limit. We can do all kinds of things with this. And so that's where this real roadmap started to form that literally I could probably tell you what we would be doing 10 years from now, to be quite honest. Like, it's just this like huge roadmap, really exciting things to come. And then I think the most exciting thing is as that's gotten off the ground and as we have seen the success that we've seen to this point, it's been such a rewarding experience, but it's also been an experience where it allows us, it buys us the goodwill, it gives us that ability to move forward, to ramp up the size of the team, to do a lot more things. And so we've really been in a process the last few months in particular of trying to build the team, get a bigger group of resources that we can utilize going forward. And so we're really kind of on the tip of the iceberg here, where things are going to start really moving quickly because we've been able to ramp up. It's very exciting.
That's funny you mentioned that, because you had said that you were worried about the community. I remember when Beyond first came out, me as well as a bunch of other people were like, hey, I got all these books. Like, I don't know if I want to buy them again. And you really could see after, every few months, it seemed like more people were opening up to the idea. And I just tried it for the first time. Gosh, it had to have been January, maybe. And that was because I had a DM that we played online on the Dork Vision YouTube channel. And he said, hey, guys, let's pitch in $20 or whatever, and then let's get it. And so we all pitched in. And we played it, and I loved that I could make I think a level 5 character in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I had the concept. It was like, okay, boom, made it. Loved that it was all easily accessible. And everyone in the group warmed up to it real quick, too, because there were a couple people who were apprehensive. My wife was one of them, and now she's excited about it. And unfortunately, I'm not in that group anymore. I'm not playing in any active games, so I don't have access to it. But one day, I hope to be able to do that again.
You probably know a guy at this point, so we'll see what we can do about that. But
Right.
the other side of that is actually we knew that, and as a longtime player coming into this. To be a fly on the wall of some of those discussions of really what we were trying to do from a pricing perspective and what the business realities were. I mean, because at the end of the day, there are business realities. The only reason that we are going to see it's going to be hard not to talk about some of it, but all the goodness that I can't quite talk about, that's coming in the next year from now. Because of all the ramping up we've been able to do. The only reason that is going to happen is because of those business realities. And I really do, as a fan and as a player and as someone who, has really come from a place, even in my younger days in particular, financial strain and everything else, my goodness, a lot of rough times my wife and I have been through. But all of that, I really do empathize with what those business realities are for the community. And so from the beginning, I have championed trying to get those prices as low as we possibly can. I think we knew that once our pricing scheme was announced, you saw that it set a new standard for the digital products. Like the prices dropped for everyone out there. And so we really pushed for that. And I think that more than anything, we kind of got into the beta And we were wanting to use that as this testing period. And we discovered that we weren't doing a great job of marketing and messaging around like what was actually going on, because we were very focused on testing, and we didn't really expect the level of engagement and feedback and everything else that was happening during that. And so we really ended up having to play a lot of catch up with that. But I think that the message really is that this is not just simply repurchasing books. There is more to that. And the great thing about what we're doing with DDB, again, if you talk to me a year from now, I think this is just going to be so abundantly clear to the community that it is not just book content. As I said at the start of the interview, we definitely have that part really, really polished. I feel like it's in a good place. You can access the books. You can kind of dive into the metadata of some of those books. And so, yes, that part is a core component, but we're doing so much more than that. And then every month, every quarter, that value is going to increase. And there are no plans whatsoever. Now, again, I can't tell the future, but there are no plans whatsoever for prices to actually increase. And so the value is just going to keep getting bigger and better. Hopefully like a Netflix type situation. It's like or Amazon Prime is a fantastic example. I think my wife was one of the early adopters of that because she probably buys too much on Amazon. But basically, she was an Amazon Prime member when all it really did was give you free 2-day shipping, and you were paying that, I don't know, $80 a year or whatever back then. And so now you're still only paying $100 a year, and you're getting all of these shows, these original you're going to get a Lord of the Rings show, in a few years. You're going to get, Amazon Music. They just keep adding value to that. And so it's almost like it's this no-brainer. And so that's really our goal with DDB, is we want people to understand that, yes, you are rebuying content, but that's not just what you're doing. You're getting so much more with that. And then one other aspect of the messaging that I really, really want to do some things with, and we're trying to figure out how we can get this out to the community, because it's a little bit of a complicated concept, but we want people to understand, just like you did with your group there, content sharing is a really major thing. That you can buy that legendary bundle somewhere around $300, I think, at the moment. But you can buy that, but then that is every single thing that has been published for 5th edition. And with that master tier subscription for $6 a month, you're able to share that with up to 36, characters and or players, like within your campaigns. And that is a really, really big deal. That, a group, it's supposed to replicate that feel, because I know when I was coming along, again, used to definitely be financially challenged. And I don't think I bought a Dungeons and Dragons book for the first 15 years that I played, maybe, because I always had someone else. Now, I was always dungeon mastering, but someone else in the group would foot the bankroll, for all the books and the materials. And then I would just, take them home with me because I had to prepare for the game, And so it's supposed to replicate that feel of groups being able to share, hopefully, maybe not my situation, but, share that financial burden and be able to really share that with their groups and their players. And I think that is another aspect that we fought really, really hard for, to make sure that you didn't have to sit around a table and every single person in that group have to buy that content. We wanted to be able to share it.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there. It's really nice. I didn't realize it was 36 characters or people. That is huge value there. Huge.
Yeah, it's 3 campaigns. At the moment, it's 3 campaigns up to 12 characters in those campaigns. Now, obviously, if somebody has multiple characters or whatever, and we are actually, that was one bit of feedback that makes a lot of sense to us, and we are actively trying to change that now. I'm not exactly sure where this is going to fall into the development slate yet, but we are going to tweak it to where you can have multiple. We're not going to cap the number of characters in a campaign. We're going to cap the number of players in a campaign. So that will allow a dungeon master to throw 50 NPCs into that campaign if they wanted to. And so the character count is not what's going to be used. It's going to be the player count. And so at that point in time, when we make that change, it is legitimately going to be up to 12 players in each campaign for 3 campaigns, you could technically be sharing that with up to 36 people. And a lot of groups are not going to need that many, but still, the idea is to cover your bases. If you run a lot of Adventures League, whatever, at a store, you can definitely do that. And we have even started working with a lot of stores, so we can get this message out there too. If you are a store and you have events that are being run at your store, or if you have a club that is running these events, we do have a special, off the site type, subscription that if you contact us and we can just, make sure that you're a store or a club, then we can extend that campaign limit up to 10 at the moment, and that's been more than enough. So
that's awesome.
When you get into that, that's 120 people that are able to play and to share that content. And so that's been really popular for the people that have discovered that. Obviously, we haven't widely publicized that yet because it's not a great way for us. Like, the way we have to do that is a little manual, but there are offerings like that we want to polish and kind of get out to the community, especially, like I said, for stores and clubs, because we want these experiences to feel like what they have felt for decades.
Yeah, no, it's you guys are definitely listening to your fan base. That, I think, is huge. That's a nice, hey, you scratch our back, stores, we'll scratch yours. Here you go. It definitely promotes the product to people who probably wouldn't use it otherwise. And the other thing I love that you guys are doing, like, say you buy all the stuff for your character, that comes off of the purchase of the books. Like, I don't think people realize that still.
Yeah, and that's another messaging element of it. It's a little bit of a complicated, setup is the reason that the marketing around that is difficult. It's hard to explain because it is a fairly foreign concept. It's not, Amazon has started doing this, but even with Amazon, if you buy a few episodes of a season of a show and then you go in and buy the entire season, they will refund some of that money, at least in most cases that I've seen. They will refund the money, but we actually take that off the top, right? And so it's like, if you're buying the 3 core rule books and then you eventually decide, hey, I want to take the plunge and get this legendary bundle, that cost is being removed from the remainder of the bundle. And so, yeah, like we really are, regardless of what Reddit said in the first month of our existence, we really are trying to work within the business realities to get this as reasonable as we possibly can. And that is something that I personally am very passionate about. And so I've been really happy with the way that we've been able to do those things. And I think one of the reasons that the reception for DnD Beyond has changed so much in the last year has really centered around people starting to understand, that value and what it's providing, that it's not simply trying to get you to rebuy hardcovers. We're trying to do other things, but then we're also trying to be as reasonable as possible. And as I said, with a twinkle in my eye, I really can't wait for, a year from now when we're hopefully at another, I don't even know what it would be. Like, I better be careful that I don't say some weird code word, but, stream of XXX, whatever that's going to be next year. I'm an iron trap, man. You're not going to get me. But the stream of XXX, like when we have another one of those, it's really going to just be exciting to see where we are at that point in time. And I really do think that we're going to see, this character sheet revamp that we've been working on. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it is legitimately something that I'm proud of. I can honestly say, I can even say this at release, that I was not fundamentally proud of what we had to release as a digital character sheet, because we took a very intentional stance that, hey, we could seal ourselves and, lock ourselves in a room somewhere and come back and polish this digital character sheet experience, for 9 more months. And we could have unveiled it on everyone. And then we would have discovered that there were a lot of problems with it still. And so we really decided to, one of the development processes that we really do espouse is if you're going to fail quickly, where you can learn from that. And so we knew that we needed to get something out and throw something against the wall and see what stuck, see what didn't. And so during that process, I've gone through at least 500,000 forum posts individually, like myself, compiling just, thousands upon thousands of points of feedback about what's working with a digital sheet, what's not. And as we've gone through that process, this thing that we are going to release this month is going to be something that I'm really, really proud of, and really, really looking forward to everything that's going to happen there. It's not going to be perfect by any means, but it is going to be a really, really big splash. And I'm looking forward to being able to work within that new framework. I can barely look at the old character or the current character sheet anymore because I've been playing with the new one for months at this point, and it is just outstanding. And I can't wait to get that out to the public. But then when we're at the stream of XXX next year, then
well, you just gave it away.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know what kind of adventure that would be. Stop saying that, but
kid friendly.
But ultimately, when we're there next year, my hope it really is that we have encounter builder, but not only encounter builders, because we were talking about this today, because of course we have to conceptualize and design this stuff way in advance. But for an encounter builder, we've got the math from the Dungeon Master's Guide, obviously. And so the math for that part is actually very, very simple compared to the math that we've had to figure out for characters. But in typical encounter builders that might exist out there today, you have this situation where you're putting in party information. So you have what the average level of the party is. You have what the average challenge ratings, that aggregation are. It mashes those up against each other. It tells you what kind of encounter you're dealing with. It's a deadly encounter or whatever. And
the baseline encounter thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it tells you, like, hey, if your party of first level characters go up against these 3 Mindflayers, they are going to just get thumped, immediately. Right. And so with all of that math, we are going to be able to have an encounter builder where you could also just simply say, here's my party. I want an encounter, type at, a deadly encounter type. And with all the tagging that we have in place, it's like, I want it to be, an Underdark environment encounter. And we'll have sliders to say, hey, this is, I would prefer to have less monsters in this encounter, or, hey, I want as many monsters as you can get into this. And so you're sliding these things, and you can hit a button, and then all of a sudden you have this encounter that is balanced according to the math, and it's picking creatures that have the Underdark environment, and it's got this just, completely ready to go encounter for you that you can simply, pull over into your encounter tracking. And so little things like that. But that really is, I was telling the team today, that's a really, really nice, like, next level of progression on the typical encounter builder. But then the real value for the community that I can't wait for is this monster builder, where you're going to be able to do that for individual monsters, where you can say, hey, this is this adult red dragon that was experimented on by Mindflayers for centuries. And I want this red dragon to have a mind blast. And so I'm going to have this pool of monster abilities over here collected from every single monster. I'm going to pull and, click and drag Mind Blast over onto this red dragon that I'm building and customizing. And it's going to use all the secret sauce math that Wizards uses to, like, adjust the challenge rating automatically. And so I really do think that once we get there, and, with the current design that we're looking at, the ease of use is going to be so big with this that, like, I legitimately think that Wizards of the Coast is going to just start using this to build monsters for their books, because, we've been talking about that. But it's also, as the community starts to build monsters, reskinning monsters, which is a huge thing that I use all the time today. I really think it's going to be a thing of the past, because this is going to be so easy. And not only that, I can take a Ring of Evasion or any other type of magic item and, click and drag that over to the dragon. It's going to wear it on its horns. And so I can, move that over to the dragon, and it will take into account those magic items as well, which is something that doesn't happen with monsters today. But yeah, so I am terribly excited to be going through the incredibly complicated process to get a firm foundation in place for character management, which has been this huge priority because D&D is all about characters, and we've got to do a great job with that. But I'm really happy, as we go through these next few months, to really put that in place and have a really, really solid iteration of that out there where we can start moving on into encounters and monsters, because I really think that it's going to change the way that people prep for D&D.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like it solves the need of what I hear a lot of DMs complain about. With a lot of people have a hard time balancing the encounters, and a lot of it's because the basic math is fine. It's easy. It's just it doesn't take into account monster abilities, or if you add magic items, the players having feats and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Wizards of the Coast, of course, Jeremy Crawford has mentioned before that they have this incredibly complex mathematical. I kind of just have in mind like Goodwill Hunting, and Jeremy like standing at the chalkboard or something. But they have all of this math that is incredibly complicated, and I love how the community sometimes comes in and says this subclass is completely broken, it is way too powerful, or this subclass is terrible, it completely underperforms. And it really is like through all the iterations of the math, like I think that a lot of times, I'm not saying always, because yes, there needs to be feedback and there needs to be tuning on things. But a lot of the times that I'm seeing that, it is something that a player or a DM is missing there. It's like, yeah, you're not thinking about this other part, that if you started doing this as you use this, then yeah, it's going to be completely balanced. And so all of that math is really precise, and obviously 5th edition is doing a really good job out there right now. It's incredibly popular, and D&D is more popular now than it's ever been. And I think that, all of that in this kind of system where you can manage those encounters and those creatures and the challenges that are coming against the characters is really going to be something, especially because, again, I do this all the time. I had a situation, I think in a one-shot not too long ago, where I wanted a Mindflayer just because it was iconic. These characters were not, anywhere close to mid-level. And I didn't want them to just get their brains eaten immediately. And so it's like, okay, what if this Mindflayer has been away from the colony too long? They've kind of lost their connection. They're decrepit, possibly not physically, but mentally, And so as I'm going through that process, what I ended up doing was I went down and found the challenge rating, I don't know, challenge rating 6 maybe, found some other creature that was a little bit caster focused. And then I simply gave it a mind blast, and the grapple with tentacles. And that was all done just on the fly. That's reskinning. That's something that, veteran DMs especially are just using all the time. And so that's happening and that works, but it always feels a little more ad hoc than I would love for it to be. And, thinking about that world where I could just have D&D Beyond open to this monster customization screen, and I could have that Mindflayer and just simply hit the down button 6 times to get from 12 to 6, and it is filtering all the math down through all of those abilities. That is really going to be a dream come true for me as a player and as a dungeon master. I mean, these are the kind of things that I'm thinking about a decade ago. Like, man, if we could just get here, what would this do for the game? And thankfully, D&D Beyond, and again, where we're headed, those things are going to start to become a reality. And as we keep going over time, it's just going to be more and more of that we're adding.
So one of the things that I didn't get a chance to play with ever was when Xanathar's Guide came out. Obviously, all the previous Unearthed Arcana class builds, some of them were tweaked. Did the Unearthed Arcana articles from the past stay in D&D Beyond?
It's a good question. So we actually, prior to this January, we did not publish any Unearthed Arcana content onto D&D Beyond in an official capacity. Now, people privately could homebrew any of the spells that had been made or whatever in UA, but ultimately, with D&D Beyond as an official tool set, we have to be pretty cautious that, especially that new player. I know that a lot of veteran players out there are like, why will you not just put all these things in there? Let me decide what I want to use. And there really are some good, compelling reasons for this because, number one, we don't have finite, very specific source management in place yet. And that's something that is actually on the pretty short-term roadmap here. It's one of the next things that we're working on. We're going to do an iteration on that. But ultimately, without that in place and us having to, and one of our core product tenets is be accessible. So we want to be very accessible, and to varying degrees, we're doing great and not so great in some areas. We definitely want to be more and more accessible to anyone that is coming to the site that's blind, for instance. And we're really trying to figure out ways to do this. And I wish it was a little easier than sometimes that ends up playing out as. But it is something that's very important to us. It's listed on our tenets that we see every day is be accessible, and that also applies to be accessible. We want to be able to use it on a computer, on a phone, on a tablet. So we want it to work on any type of device. We want it to also be accessible for veteran players, where it can delight them, but then at the same time, it is very, very easy to use for a beginner. And covering that entire bell curve is an incredibly big task. And I would really argue that a lot of the false starts that happened with digital tool sets were because they catered one way or another to one of those groups too strongly, and they weren't able to invest, because it's a huge investment, to make that to where it can cover that entire bell curve. But that is something very core to us. And so we want that to work for beginners and veterans in that way. And so so I'm circling back to Unearthed Arcana now. When we are considering putting that content in DDB, we have to be cautious that we wouldn't put something in there that a beginner is going to get incredibly confused about. And once we get source management in place, it's going to be a much easier proposition, right? That we can get this UA in there. We can, we have started doing it. So as of January, anything going forward that applies to characters, we are including. So we just recently included the centaurs and minotaurs, where you can use those races. And so, as that comes in there, when that, or if that, to be honest, I don't know if it actually will make it into the final of any of these products, but if it gets published, we've told the community that we would essentially lock that down to where new characters couldn't be created using that content, because we don't want people to be confused between versions or anything like that. And so it really does exist out there for playtest purposes. So when Xanathar's was about to come out, we decided that, hey, we're not going to put any of these 25 subclasses or whatever were made during UA. We're not going to put these into D&D Beyond, because, hey, we're going to release a book in a couple of months that's going to publish almost all of these. And so we don't want that kind of upheaval with the community just immediately. So that's kind of been our approach. And we are going to start seeing more and more into Unearthed Arcana now that we've added homebrew subclasses to the site, and you have the capability to do those. You can certainly recreate almost anything that you would have seen previously in UA, because our homebrew system is the tools that we actually use to build this stuff. So you should be able to cover the bases with a little bit of extra effort. But we kind of have to walk that line between not confusing new players, but also offering the flexibility for some of the veterans.
Right. So homebrew stuff. Now, do I, as somebody who would go in there, do I have access to anybody's homebrew stuff, or
yeah,
how does that work?
Good question. So we have the concept of public and private homebrew. So again, with our homebrew system, this is one of those things. I'm hoping that a year from now, I'm talking to folks and I'm saying, just like I did with a character sheet, yeah, we got something out there. weren't incredibly happy with it, but we knew that we were going to go back and make something really special after we got all the feedback. Homebrew is definitely in the early part of that cycle. We knew that homebrew content and the ability to customize content was 100% vital and essential to anything, because I know that was something that really held back D&D Insider. People complain about that constantly, that you couldn't, in fourth edition, you couldn't homebrew things and add them to that system. And so we definitely approached it from the beginning that, hey, we need to allow these things to exist. The problem was, it's such a complicated process, especially for us, because we're not simply adding a spell name and a casting time and an action type. And, we're not simply doing that. We're tagging it. We're adding, what save is required. What is the area of effect size? Where, there are all the metadata that we're doing. It's a pretty manual process. I mean, trust me, I know, because I went through every single spell, before we launched, and I'm the one that parsed that stuff out. Right. And so it's like, this there's a lot to it, and so we wanted to give people the ability to do it, and we really did just take the tools that we were using to do that ourselves, and we tried to just slap a little bit of a prettier face on it. Like, you could see our back end stuff, and of course, since it's not open to the public, it's not beautiful user experience, but we tried our best to spruce it up just a little bit, to give it to the community, where the community, again, could let us know what is working, what is not working. Some of the things we know are not working well, but still, it's like, what is good about this, what is bad about this, and then we are going to undergo a similar process to what we've been doing with the character sheet, and we're going to come back to that, and we're going to hopefully make that a much, much easier process going forward. So, having said all that, public and private homebrew, you can't access someone else's private naturally. So if you're creating something that's just for your home game, you're going to make that for one of your players in your game. The people within your campaign can access that, and you can award it to other players and all of that. But then the public is not able to see that. If you decide to publish your content, then the community can come in and essentially add that to their collection. So it's very similar to Google Drive. You can add to my drive, and then once you do that, you can see that in your drive and use that in your drive. It would be a very similar situation. So if you see something that someone else has created that really strikes a chord with you, and you want to use that in your game. I did this I think with a slave background the other day. I liked it. So someone had created a slave background. I'm sorry, I'm not giving you credit right now. I'll look it up at some point, but created a slave background that had a really nice background feature and all of that. And I'm just thinking, hey, this is normally the thing I would make myself. Someone else has already put in that effort. It reads well. It's solid. It's balanced, all those things. And so I'm going to add that to my collection. And then when I go create characters, I now see a slave background show up there. And, I'm able to select that for those characters because I chose to have it. So anything that's public, you can go out and browse and see, but that's not going to assault you when you're trying to create a character unless you specifically on demand choose that to be part of your collection.
So interesting. That kind of flows into my next question with campaign management. If I have a campaign, say I have 3 different campaigns set up, and I want that slave background in one, can I only activate it in the one rather than all 3 if it's part of my collection?
Excellent question. And right now the answer is it would show up for any campaign that you were in. And this is getting back to what I was saying a little earlier, that we know that source management is turning into a priority at this point. So source management is going to be great, because first of all, it is very necessary for Adventures League play. We need the ability to, so this is all just, the guts for what would become AL validation. So the player's handbook plus 1 rule, all of that is going to come into play with source management. You're going to be able to select, hey, I want an AL character right at character creation. And if you do that, it's not going to, it's going to lock, certain sources from you. And we haven't actually completely decided yet. We're going to kind of, this may be one of the things that we'll poll the community about a little bit, but I'm very torn at the moment whether I want that selection of the source to happen early, where you're basically saying, Player's Handbook, you get that. You can't even uncheck that. But then any other source, you can choose that, and then it cascades, and everything you choose has to be from Xanathar's if that's what you chose. Or if we want to just simply open up character creation, but you do know it's an AL character and you're creating things, and then the moment you choose something that is in one other source, then it locks down the sources. I don't know what the right direction is for that, but we'll definitely kind of test some of the hypotheses there and see what's going to end up working best for the community. But that's the idea behind that. And so it's the same thing with homebrew, is you'll be able to, at your account level, like some people just don't like homebrew. I don't use a ton of it, to be honest, because I really prefer something that has gone through a rigorous playtest process, whether that's Wizards of the Coast or my own. And so it's like I typically don't just go grab random things in homebrew. And so someone like me might go out and say, all right, on my account, I don't want to see homebrew content. And then you just it would lock it down from that, top down level. And it would be the same that, I don't want anybody using any of those subclasses in Xanathar's. Then you could kill it at the account level. But then you can go down to the campaign level. And so campaign by campaign, you can say, for this campaign, you're only going to get to use, this. We're playing Curse of Strahd, and I only want you using magic items out of that book or, the Player's Handbook. And you can do that. Or at the character level, you can say, I only want to use, these sources. And the way it will work, at least currently, again, we're just getting off the ground with this, but the way it would work is that all official content, any D&D content, is going to automatically by default be whitelisted. So you're going to get that content. And then anything that is homebrew or some kind of other additional source, like some of the Critical Role content that we started to do, or even Unearthed Arcana content that we're adding in there. So anything that is not outside of a published source, you would have to, it's automatically blacklisted, and you would have to whitelist it. So it's like on demand for those supplemental sources, and then you would have to turn it off if you don't want it for the official sources.
That sounds like some difficult decisions need to be made. I don't know the right one either.
Yeah, and that's the thing is we really do. One of our core values are it's experiment to decide, and so I can freely say that I feel like in my gut that it's going to be best to start for the AL thing, for instance. It's going to be best to start with Player's Handbook, and you have to choose the other source to eliminate confusion. I feel that in my gut, but I don't know. At this point, that is just a hypothesis. Right. And so therefore we are going to get that out there. We're going to see if that's working, and if it's not working, or if we get early feedback when we kind of ask the community that doing it another way is better, then we will certainly pay attention to that. As we talked about a little earlier, we really are in tune with the feedback loop. I wish I could be a little more active directly in the forums. At the last couple of months have been really, really crazy, and I've been unable to be as active as I like to be. But whether it's me personally doing it or people on the team, we are constantly in the forums. We're constantly paying attention to feedback from a variety of other sources, and it's very important to us. And just like the playtest, I believe, was the most important thing that ever happened for 5th edition. D&D Next was the most important thing. People could maybe argue with me on that, but I really genuinely feel like that was the most important thing that happened for 5th edition. That playtesting is so important, and it's the same thing for us. We want to test this stuff out there. We don't want to always just listen to the loud minority or majority. It's really hard to tell with the internet. So we want things to get out there and for you to be able to play with them a while before we do any kind of knee-jerk reactions to these things. And so we're really taking a methodical approach, similar to what Wizards of the Coast has been doing with the actual content.
It's really hard to do, too. It's easy to say, oh, my gosh, this is broken. Let's just rule it out like Rangers or, whatever.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing, is they've done a slow burn there. And it's interesting. People might want to fight me on this, but I really stand by the fact that they have not done some type of knee-jerk reaction with the Ranger or revised Ranger. I think that they've now come back full circle. And again, I won't divulge any potentially secret information here, but I think that they've come back around to even what they've released to the public at this point is that, hey, it might end up being a bad thing if we have two separate versions of the same class in the game. We might end up instead, the ranger is the ranger is the ranger, and we're going to instead introduce, alternate class features type system, and where you can essentially customize your class features based on which type of ranger you want to play. But then, think about that. That opens up that same system for other classes. If I want a barbarian that maybe wears armor or, something like that, I could potentially replace an armored defense with something, some other type of class feature. And we maybe would not, and again, I'm not saying remotely that that's even the direction they're going, but it's still what they've been discussing in their thought process. And if we ended up with something like that, to me, that's much better than them simply just throwing out the revised Ranger and the potential confusion. Because, think about that even on DnD Beyond, like what would we do with that? Like that's going to even look ugly in a menu,
right?
Ranger, and then you have a Ranger revised in parentheses, and then people are going to think like, why would they not just change it to that one? There's a lot of issues that they could have really gotten into if they had taken a knee-jerk reaction, and I think that approach is not one that plays to the impatient, folks in the community, and sometimes that really communicate quite a bit on the internet. But I think that overall, we are in a game that has been in existence for 43, 44 years, and that being the case, these guys are custodians, they're stewards of a legacy and they've taken that legacy and elevated it into places that it's never been as a brand, as a game, as a hobby. And we can be fans of that, and we really can trust that they're doing these things very intentionally. And again, for us with the digital side of things, we are wanting to take that same kind of approach.
Yes, no, that's good. Is there any potential for third-party publishers to ever be affiliated with D&D Beyond?
Yes, there is potential. It's a little bit more complicated and harder than I wish it was. I really do. I would just, everybody like Oprah or whatever, you get a book,
DM's Guild, charge them for your homebrew stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that it is incredibly reasonable to think that at some point in time we would have a way for creators to engage and to make money on the platform. Like I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that anyone that has any kind of just business background would be like, well, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, a lot of complications with that, a lot of complexity in development, making sure that any kind of financial system is a little difficult, but either way, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I could absolutely see that happening at some point in the future. When it comes to third-party publishers, Kobold Press, even some of the stuff that Critical Role has done with Green Ronin, that gets far more complicated. They're incredibly muddy waters. We're trying to navigate those, and we just haven't been able to come to any kind of real solution for those things yet. So don't have anything that I can report other than, hey, I would love to see it happen. Don't know how, if, or when it can happen, but it is something that is being discussed, and it's just a little harder than everybody wishes it was.
Right. So something that a couple people and I were talking about also was the D&D Beyond YouTube channel. Now, is that affiliated with you guys over there, or is that a Wizards of the Coast channel?
It's definitely us. So that has been one of the things that has just been a happy surprise along the way. Again, if it hasn't come across to you as we've been talking here, I kind of love this game. Like it's just been such a huge part of my life. It's I am definitely an all-in kind of person, and Dungeons and Dragons is something that I went all in on a long time ago, and just love it. And so I am a fan. Like I legitimately am a fan. I work with this every single day. we were talking about it today. We're about to start. The team is getting so big that we're going to have to start 2 separate, like pretty large D&D groups. And so, like, we've got so much D&D going on. I play with my kids and their friends.
Too. I just streamed a game with my 7-year-old daughter like a week ago.
That's fantastic. Kid D&D is like possibly best D&D, but yeah, it's just outstanding stuff. And so I'm constantly immersed in this, and my excitement does not diminish. I think it legitimately grows. And so when it comes down to that, see, I've now gotten distracted by kids. I don't even remember your question. What was your question? There you go.
The D&D YouTube channel.
Yes, great. So this was a happy accident where as we got off the ground and we started, getting a more and more firm footing, I saw that Mr. Todd Kenrick was doing some really great work on Dungeon Life. And so he was trying to kind of do this documentary style interview format where he was really talking to the game designers, getting behind the scenes, more or less, information, and really getting into understanding them and their personalities and what makes them tick. And, I really liked what I was seeing there. And so at the Stream of Annihilation last year, so it's been like a year, I met Todd and we talked and essentially figured out that was his passion, that he had a day job, that was his passion, it's something he really wanted to do. And so a couple months later, it's like, hey, would you like to stop it with a Patreon and all that, and we'll pay you a salary and you can come over and pretty much do the same thing you were doing. But we're going to give you even more avenues to be able to kind of get this content out there. And so for me at that point in time, it really was, I want D&D Beyond to be this experience. It's not just a digital tool set. It's I don't know if you've seen the cartoon theme that we.
Yes, the new one that just came out. We were talking about that too, because some people don't like it. They were like, "Oh, it's just for." They don't watch Critical Role. I don't have time to watch it, and I didn't know it was for Critical Role, but I loved the throwback to the '80s cartoons.
Yeah, I'll tell you, like, I am not gonna sit here and badmouth anybody, but if you did not like that, I kind of question like whether you like things. But anyway, it was
just didn't. I know that I'll tell you their criticism. Their criticism was that it didn't make sense for people who are new to the hobby, but they also didn't realize it was for Critical Role fans at first.
Yeah.
So that was why. And once they found that out, they're like, oh, I guess the target audience is Critical Role fans, which it is. It came from Critical Role. I saw the original.
Yeah. It definitely makes more sense. I think that even with that, nothing like that could have happened if we weren't looking for ways, again, to be a destination, to be an experience. We want to be, and this is kind of how the idea evolved, because we've added written content as well. So we have daily content. I think today we had an article by James Hake that was regarding the Castle Enters and the new Waterdeep Dragon Heist adventure that is coming out this fall. And as part of that content, that is something that I would want to read as a fan. So for years, I have, sought out that content and found that content and consumed that content. And so I wanted to, early on, as I started seeing what was going on with Dungeon Life, I was basically, cracking the knuckles and saying like, hey, I want to do this video content. I want to eventually get to where we have this written article content. I want us to, basically be the Rolling Stone of D&D. And, that's where we're really, really headed. We've got some just fantastic guest writers that are coming in, doing some really, really interesting things. We've already had Mike Shea, Sly Flourish online, and we've had James Introcaso, which he and James Hake contributed to, they co-authored a lot of what's going on in Waterdeep Dragon Heist. So some really outstanding folks and what they're doing. Oh yeah,
Dungeon Master.
Yeah. Mike is a great guy. I'm actually going to see him pretty soon at Origins. Looking forward to that. But yeah. So all of that is just a place we want to. Since we have the ability to do this, we want to be a platform for these emerging voices in the hobby to be able to tell their story, to be able to share their insights and their thoughts. And so that's a big part of what we want to do. And again, I think that you see this even with Blizzard. Overwatch, I'm not sure how Overwatch was going to do initially. When it was announced and when it was, about to come out, there was a lot of negativity around Overwatch. And of course, it became one of the most popular games. I think this incredible thing happened is that as it was coming out, Jeff, the game director for everything that's going on with Overwatch, he came on and started live streaming development updates and stuff, and it was just this incredibly organic, authentic thing where you're hearing directly from the horse's mouth. And I think that is such a big deal when it comes to D&D, is to be able to hear from Mike Merles and hear from Jeremy Crawford and hear from Chris Perkins and Kate Welch and all of these people that are working on this game, to hear their insights into the design process, to hear about the lore that is going into all of this and just how extensively thought out this stuff has to be. I think it really resonates with fans, and it's something that we want to continue to provide. And again, with this written article content, we want it to be thought-provoking. We want it to be something that is helpful. We want it to be something that a fan, someone like me, that it's like, hey, I want to live in this every single day. It's a place where you can go and have at least a little bit of D&D, in this place every single day. And then thankfully, there are others out there doing great things too. And you can go and you can, have your appetizers, all over the place. But we want that to always be the case with D&D Beyond. And we've had the opportunity to do that. And I think it's worked out really, really well. And it's something that, again, it was not our original intent to turn into that type of platform, but we saw the opportunities. And when I see something that's like, hey, that would be a really good thing, and we can do that. Let's go do it. And so that's what happened with all of that.
Yeah, D&D Beyond, the YouTube channel is fantastic. I was excited about Xanathar's Guide just because I felt like it was going to give me a lot of things I could do at my table. But the month and a half leading up to the early release, that got me so excited. I watched some of those videos 3-4 times and sent it to my wife. And I'm like, look, this would be cool. And sent it to my players that we were about to start a new campaign. We actually delayed our campaign because of watching those videos just for the Arcane Trickster, just to see if it was going to work for what we wanted for one of my players.
Nice. Yeah. And I remember Todd was, barely alive during that. He was editing a lot of video, but yeah, it was quite the ramp up, and we've got some really exciting things coming up with content later in the year, and just all of that access and all of that willingness of Wizards of the Coast to peel the curtain back a bit, I think is this really outstanding thing. And we just got done with the Stream of Many Eyes, met so many incredible people there. I mean, Sam Witwer, the voice of Darth Maul. Like, I think some people know him as other things more, but he's Darth Maul. And so, all of that is going on. And Sam Witwer is there, and his brother Mike, and Kyle Newman, and all these incredible guys are working on this book called Art and Arcana, and it's a visual history of Dungeons and Dragons. And it's just outstanding. I saw the book, like the proof copy of the book, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is heaven for me. And just to hear about the labor of love that they put into this thing to make it a reality and to make it something that the community and that fans will have forever, it really is just outstanding. And so we got to talk to them about that and interview them. And so Todd has all kinds of really, really amazing interviews that are going to be coming out, in the months, because we got a while until the next release. Right. We've got some really, really great content from a lot of people in the community that are doing just incredibly intriguing things. And so stay tuned for that. That it's going to be great as well.
Oh, I will. I'll be on it. Every day I check it. It's one of the first things I watch. So usually around like 9 a.m. I'm like, yeah. No, you guys are doing a great job. I want to thank you for everything you've done. It's clearly been one of the best products outside of, Wizards of the Coast that's been done for their products. And so thank you for that. And, thank you for taking the time to do this. I appreciate, your time. I know you're a family man. Obviously, you're really busy. And
it's all right. I think I heard my oldest son come home, barely in the background. So we're going to go out there, and I'm sure we will catch some troll hunters, and then we'll read a little bit and get everybody in the bed.
Awesome. Anything you want to plug outside of your app and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's ask this: like, when do we think this is going to air?
I've got about 4 videos, so maybe a month. Not even a month.
All right. So let's go into the future for a second. All right. So I think by that point in time, we are probably going to be ramping up for Gen Con. So we've got some really cool stuff planned for Gen Con, and very excited about that. Maybe, trying to work with Critical Role a little bit on that. So very, very exciting stuff. And then I think that absolutely by that point in time, the character sheet revamp that this fabled character sheet revamp, if it's not out by the time this airs, then everybody is just going to throw eggs onto my face in this video. But yeah, I'm very, very excited to get that out. Be sure to check that out, because I've been playing with it for quite a while, and it really is something special. And again, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is ever perfect upon release, but we are going to have a really, really good jumping off point that we can tweak, and we can continue to listen to community feedback, and very excited about that.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that character sheet. I will say that was the one thing that I did have a problem with because the skills on the side when you go to print your sheet, it was really long and small. But no.
So, and see, that's the thing, is that even the digital sheet is a big part of this change, but very excited. In fact, it's one of the last things we're doing here, and I was seeing the team working on it today, and I'm pretty sure that the development completed today on the PDF output, and so the PDF is in a much better spot. One of the things is we call them snippets, but now you don't just simply have class features listed. You have actual little short descriptions about what that class feature does. You have page number references. You have all kinds of things going.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so it's going to be outstanding. Just a marked, night and day improvement over what is currently out there. And so yeah, very excited about it. And hopefully at the time that folks get to see this, they're going to be enjoying it.
That's awesome. Thank you again, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And,
I really appreciate you having me on.
You are an excellent interview. Dave was spot on. I'm going to end the broadcast, but I just want to give a quick shout out to the software DnD Beyond. If you're playing D&D and you're not using DnD Beyond, you are missing out. So head on over to DnD Beyond. You'll just need a Twitch account to get started, and check it out. See what they have to offer. I guarantee you it will improve your gaming experience beyond your wildest dreams.